Tom, 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 ta ta Tom, Tom, Tom. I believe you're in Platinum, right? And you've been in Platinum for quite a while. When we first started working together, your main problems were economical, not making enough SCVs and not making enough buildings to spend all your money kind of thing. And you like really quickly figured out how to follow that advice and really solve those problems, and you just immediately rocketed from silver up to platinum. But then you're kind of stuck in platinum and you can't move on. And we've had rules for a long time. Don't send me a game where you didn't meet the benchmarks because that's why you lost. And don't send me any games where you win. And the problem you've been having lately is that you always win if you meet the benchmarks, and so you've never had any games to send me. And that's discouraging because if you're stuck in platinum, then you're losing half your games. But if every one of those games is because you missed the benchmarks, then that means you're missing the benchmarks half the time. So anyway, you decided to just send me all your games, and we'll see what we can glean from that. So this is a TVZ. I don't know what TVZ build you're going for. It looks like 2 racks, 3 racks with gas already. This is a little bit weird. Tech Lab, so you're going to go for a quick stim, I assume. Yeah, quick stim. And no Expo. This is very risky play. And TVZ... okay. So the TVZ matchup, if you get to Tier 3, if you get to the late game, Zerg just kind of has an edge. It's not a huge unwinnable edge, but it's an edge. And and also because they can focus entirely on macro, if you don't put on any early pressure, they have a really huge edge because they can get a much bigger economy than you almost no matter what you do. So most Terran TVZ builds rely on a little bit of early pressure, followed up by a strong late game expansion. You're going to go for a Marine Marauder Stim SCV pull. You left these 2 Marines at the Watchtower. I think that's a big mistake. Since this is going to be a 7-minute SCV pull, really all that matters is what you had at 7 minutes. And we know I'm going to hit S in a second, but when I do, I want to see the number 1500. And because you have Stim, it's okay if it says 1300. And it doesn't. So you're $200 short. And this just seems like, yeah, of course you're going to be short because you made 4 racks and only 1 add-on. So this isn't... whenever you SCV pull all in, efficiency is all that matters. You've got a mule undropped here as well. And like a bunch of stuff queued up in these racks, which is good. When you're pushing, you want to be looking at your army, so you want to have a bunch of stuff queued up in your racks. But before the fight actually starts, you don't really want to have a bunch of stuff queued up in your racks. So, at this point, we're almost to 8 minutes, at which point you want to have a $2,000 army, and you've only got a $1,300 plus Stim is $1,500 army. It just doesn't seem like you have enough. And this is the problem with SCV pulls against Zerg, is that Banelings just rip SCVs to shreds. SCV pulls work wonders in TVP because Protoss can't get area of effect stuff until 10 minutes. But they're the only race that has that problem. Zerg can get area of effect stuff at 5 minutes. Terran can get their first tank at 5 minutes. The other Terran and Zerg are just kind of immune to SCV pulls, as long as they suspect that it's coming and make AoE. So this went terribly. Not only did he spend more money on his army, I mean, you're basically trying to catch him off guard, because infantry with Stim against Zerg isn't even... okay, infantry without Stim against Zerg, you need 20 to 30% more army than he has, and you need to not get surrounded just to win a fight against his default units, Zerglings and Roaches. Infantry with Stim, you need at least as much army as him, and you need to not get surrounded in order for that to work, and you need to not let any big splashes happen. So I mean, you gotta tell me what your win rate is with this build, but it doesn't seem like it'd be very high. You're basically only gonna win if you get here and the Zerg doesn't have an army, and by not making an Expo, he's gonna be able to scout that an all-in is coming really easily, just by saying, oh, you don't have an Expo, you're all-inning. And then throw down a Baneling Nest and just mass Zerglings with... right, because in order to compete with a one-base Terran, all you need is a fully saturated base plus 4 workers, because a mule counts as 4 workers. And then, you know, you're even on econ, and you don't need to be ahead on econ to win. You just need to have a reasonable army. So this infantry kind of walks out and dies, and that's the end of the game. So, if you're going 2 Marine SCV all in. I don't really know the best way to do it, so it's hard to give advice here. I can say that the build you went for was suboptimal. I can say that at 8 minutes you want this to say $2,000 spent, and it's going to say 1,500 plus stim. So there's a good $300 you could have squeezed out of this. Actually, if you look in your bank, there's $600 you could have squeezed out of this. Sorry, one way to get a bigger army when you all in is supply drops. I know it sounds silly, but a mule gives you $300 in a minute and a half, where the supply drop gives you $100 right now. I don't know if it's worth doing, but that's one way. Another way is add-ons. Honestly, if you're not going to push out until 7 minutes, then any reactors you build before 6 minutes are going to have paid for themselves by then. So a 3 racks with 2 reactors instead of a 4 racks with 1 tech lab would probably give you a much bigger army. Actually, honestly, a 2 racks with a tech lab and a reactor, 2 racks, gives you $2,000 of army at 8 minutes. So if this build gives you less than that, and a 2 racks is easier to do, just go 2 racks, man. You don't need to make 4 racks. How is it helpful to get 4 racks? I don't understand. So yeah, I would adjust your build ever so slightly. Just do a 2 racks and pull SCVs and all in with it. I still suspect that a 2 racks all in, even though it'll be stronger than this build, still isn't gonna win if he knows that it's coming. The problem is that he can tell if you expand it. Overlords are pretty fast now. If he plants an overlord here and floats it down and floats it back, he knows whether you have an expo, and then he's just going to be ready. I don't know. Don't know what else to say. So it seems like this is the build that you'd only do if you've given up on TVZ altogether, and I don't blame you. TVZ is pretty damn hard lately. But there are better all-ins. Like, if you want to give up on TVZ and just all-in all the time, 2-port Banshee is the best TVZ all-in. And that might no longer be true now that people get lots of queens, but I suspect it still is. The cool thing about 2-port Banshee with Hellions or with an Expo is that if you fail to kill him, you have total and utter map control with your Banshees, because he just basically can't leave his base, because his only anti-air is going to be queens until he gets either mutas or whatever the other thing is. So he can't take a third, he can't leave his base, he can't spread creep. And if he can't spread creep, he can't take a third. So those two things kind of go together. So 2-port Banshee, get Cloak with your 4th Banshee, walk in and just kill everything. And you'll win like half your games just because he doesn't have a lair yet, and there's no way to get cloak detection without a lair. I mean, look at this. At 8 minutes, he doesn't have a lair, so he would have lost if you 2-port Banshee. He does have that Evo chamber, and he could theoretically throw down spores, but as long as you kill the spores before they come up, pick one base, usually his main, and completely eliminate it, and he'll be like, well, I'll just spore up my natural and go from there. And yes, you only get to kill his main, he transfers his workers to his natural, but now he's on one base, you're on one base, and you already have Banshees, and he doesn't even have a spawning pool, he doesn't have a Baneling Nest, he doesn't have an Evo chamber, he only has one hatchery, so he only gets like 7 larvae per minute. And then just keep, you can come back later with almost anything and mop him up. You can keep pumping Banshees and just be prepared for the muta transition, but again, if he doesn't have a lair, it's going to be a long time before that muta transition. So, you should be able to just Google 2-port Banshee TVZ cheese and find some good VODs of other people doing it and good, build orders and stuff, and just do that. The 2-racks cheese is the easiest to do, obviously. That's basically what you're relying on here. But the big problem with any cheese that relies on an SCV pull is Banelings. And, what other cheeses are there for TVZ? There's the Marauder Hellion, one base. Basically, you go the Reactor Hellion opening, so they think that you're just Reactor Hellion into Expoing. And you plant Marines around wherever he wants to put his Overlord, so that he hopefully can't spot that you don't have an Expo. And then you just make 3 racks with 3 tech labs and get concussive shells and stim, and just spam as many Hellions as you can with as many Marauders as you can, and go as soon as stim finishes. You should have like 8 Hellions and like 6 Marauders or something. And pull a bunch of SCVs, auto-repair them, make sure that all the damage you do is soaked up by the Hellions and gets repaired. Hellions are so damn quick that if your Hellions are in front and your Marauders are behind them, and he comes out with Banelings, you can just immediately run your Hellions away and not get hit by anything. And if he comes out with Zerglings, you can take the low health Hellions and retreat them because they're really fast. And that's the general Marauder Hellion all in. I still think 2-port Banshee is better than Marauder Hellion because anything you do on the ground, the Zerg can counter just by mass Zerglings. Whereas 2-port Banshee, the counters are air things, and Zerg anti-air is just terrible. They hate making anti-air units. If they're forced to make mutas, that's almost a loss by itself. If they're forced to make corruptors before they're anywhere near being able to make broodlords, those units are completely useless. And spores, terrible. They do like half the damage of a turret while costing more than a turret. And queens are good anti-air, but you can only really use 2 or 3 queens, so if you force them to make 10 queens, then that's kind of a win by itself, because once you have stimmed infantry with Medivacs, queens kind of fall apart and die. Anyway, if you want to not all-in TVZ, there's plenty of other ways to do that, but it seems like, I mean, you wouldn't have all-in if you wanted to not all-in, so, you know, find a better all-in. All I'm saying. Zall I'm saying. I wonder exactly what units you have at 7 minutes compared to what you'd have with the 2 Rex. This is 3 Marauders and 10 Marines. And I think I can just use math to figure out what you'd have without having to go try it. 3 Marauders and 10 Marines, right? So you get a Rax. If you get a 12 Rax and a 15 Rax and the 13 gas, and you only keep 1 guy on gas until you get your orbital, and then put 3 guys on gas, and then you get your reactor core and you get your starport. Not your starport, your tech lab. Then you should have the reactor starting right now, so it should be finished at 4:30. The tech lab would be starting. Okay, so you're going to start production of 1 Marauder and 2 Marines per 30 seconds at 4:30. So if we go out to 7 minutes, that's 2 minutes and 30 seconds. So 5 production cycles. So you should have 5 Marauders and 10 Marines. What did you have? I think you had 3 Marauders and 10 Marines. So you'll just have 2 more Marauders. There you go. And Marauders are kind of crap in TVZ. They're not kind of crap. They're utterly crap. They're completely crap. You should never ever make Marauders except to soak up Baneling hits. So I'm not sure that 5 Marauders and 10 Marines is actually better than what you did. So maybe you were right not to do it. But the problem is you don't have the equivalent. You know, like it'd be nice to trade 2 Marauders for 5 Marines. To have 3 Marauders and 15 Marines. But if you're looking for a build that gets 3 Marauders and 15 Marines and also has Stim, you are going to have to get this 3rd Rax. And you're probably just going to have to go Reactor, Tech Lab, and then Naked. And then just make Marines out of this one. So like 3 Marauders and then 2 Marines out of this one. 10 Marines out of this one. And 3 Marines out of this one, and that'll get you 315. So 315, I think, is what you should be shooting for, and that's how you do it, mathematically speaking. Obviously, I haven't tried it, but I'm betting it'd work. Also, because you have no intention of spending any gas, this is a lot of gas to have mined for an all-in that intends not to use gas. Like that's $300 that just didn't get turned into Marines right now. I completely disapprove. Pull all the guys out of gas. One thing that I do, some of my biggest, strongest Marine-based 2-base stuff. Docs.google.com. Terran openers. Da-na-na-na. If we look at the biggest 10-minute army you can possibly get while making only Marines, that's this build, right? $4,000 of just Marines with Stim and combat shields. 9 gas, 16 second racks, orbital, tech lab, reactor supply, 27 expo, 2 more racks supply. This gets a 9 gas, but only puts 1 guy on it. I'm not necessarily saying you should try that, but my point is that each Marauder per minute that you make is going to cost 25 gas per minute, 50 gas per minute, right? And each SCV you have on gas gives you 40 gas per minute. So you basically just need a 10 gas per minute surplus, as well as 1 guy mining gas in order to keep up constant Marauder production. So having 3 guys on gas is just overkill. If you're going to do 1 tech lab Marauders with pure Marine otherwise, then you only need 1 guy mining gas. So start with 3 guys, get stim, build up a 10 to... I guess if you're going for 3 minutes, you need a 30 gas surplus, and then pull off everyone but 1 guy, and then that'll keep you at 0 gas while you make Marauders. Math, baby. Okay, anyway, moving on.